Chapter 1. The Ash Born Beneath Twin Suns. Listen, apprentice, ... Listen to the breath between stars. There is no peace in the silence. There is only memory, bound in flame and sand, waiting to be heard. Let me tell you of the one born not of flesh, but of fate, a birth carved in dust beneath twin suns that never weep. He came screaming into light, but no gods answered. No father named him, only the wind did. It whispered through Shmi Skywalker's bloodless hands, through the wires of her shackles, through the cracked stone of her home on Tatooine. A world of heat, of scars, of slavery. The Force shifted that day, subtle as a shadow folding, loud as thunder heard in the bones of dying stars. It had chosen, or perhaps it had been tricked into choosing. He was not born, he was conjured, not by science, not by sin, but by will. Some call it prophecy, some call it manipulation. Others call it the curse that broke the galaxy. He was small then, wide-eyed, ash-footed. His name was Anakin. He built things from broken metal, from garbage, from ruin. And he smiled when they moved. He made droids that mimicked kindness, pods, that kissed lightning. And his mother, tired as she was, would sometimes smile too. But nothing born in chains can stay gentle forever. He did not know the name, Jedi. He did not know the shape of stars beyond sand. He only knew the hunger, the need to rise, the need to be free, and then the dream came. A man cloaked in dusk and defiance. Qui-Gon Jinn, not a savior, not truly, merely a herald of storms. He saw the boy and felt the tremor in the Force. Too strong to still, like a tidal wave just before it crashes. He asked questions. The answers frightened him. No, father. Midichlorians, too dense to measure. A will born of nothing. Qui-Gon whispered a word into the galaxy's wound. Chosen one. The council recoiled. Yoda squinted through centuries. Windu frowned with thunder in his heart. This child, too old to begin, too wild, too strange. And yet, the pull of prophecy. The boy stood before them in the great temple, his limbs stiff, his eyes lost in brightness. The masters watched him like a riddle too dangerous to solve. He saw fear, his own. Theirs the Force saw more. It saw a shape rising from blood. A scream in the shape of destiny. He was denied. But destiny does not bend to denial. Qui-Gon moved. Forward alone. The duel came. A Sith emerged from shadows long thought buried. Darth Maul, blade of red, face of ritual, hunger in motion. And in the end, Qui-Gon fell. Obi-Wan, newly orphaned of a master, bound himself to the boy, not out of love, not yet, out of duty, out of fear of failure. Anakin trained him to walk the edge, to serve, to suppress. But the edge is not the center, and a wound trained to hide will always rot beneath the surface. Anakin missed his mother, dreamed of her nightly, her hands, her voice, her chains. The Jedi taught him to let go. But how does one let go of the only warmth ever known? He was alone in the temple, surrounded by thousands. He walked among masters who could not feel his storm. He learned patience, but not peace. Discipline, but not understanding. And in the shadows of the Republic, the Sith returned, cloaked not in armor, but in politics, in smiles, in slow poisoning. Palpatine watched him, not as a senator, not as a friend, as a gardener watches a rare and dangerous seed. In time, the Clone Wars would come, but not yet. Not in this chapter. Now, the boy stands alone in his quarters. The suns of Tatooine long since vanished from his sky. He does not sleep, he listens. To the Force, to the whispers, to something distant, cold. Something that calls him not Padawan, but mine. Thus the holocron speaks. The Chosen One was never meant to bring balance without cost. The Force, once wounded, will always seek to heal by bleeding through another Anakin. Skywalker was not salvation. He was the knife, and the galaxy would learn this. One cut at a time. Chapter 2. Chains shall be broken, but not by mercy. There is a lie buried beneath every oath, a fracture behind every law that claims to serve. The light. The Jedi swore to uphold peace, but peace enforced by blindness is not peace. It is silence before collapse. And into this silence, the boy from Tatooine was dragged. Coruscant, a world of towers piercing clouds, of senators who smile as they steal, of temples built, not for gods, but for control. Here the Jedi walked, above the billions, apart from the chaos, certain in their belief. But the Force had already begun to recoil. Anakin was brought here not as a son, but as an exception. They did not see him. They saw prophecy. They saw a gamble. They saw a mistake waiting to be managed. He did not fit. Too wild, too passionate, too quick to feel. Where others meditated, he mourned. Where others obeyed, he questioned. The temple's walls were quiet, but inside him burned the desert, a storm of longing and memory. His mother's face still wet with dust and goodbye. They trained him. Anyway, Obi-Wan, now a master by fire rather than choice, carried both guilt and promise. He taught Anakin as he had been taught by structure, by repetition, by restraint. But Anakin was not like him. He was never meant to be. The Force had chosen a being of motion, not balance. It had chosen a flame, not a candle. The bond between them grew sharp. A brotherhood forged without preparation, cracked by unspoken truths. Obi-Wan feared failure. Anakin feared being left behind. The years turned. Anakin grew taller, stronger, more dangerous. They sent him on missions. They gave him robes. They taught him rules, but never let him ask why. He succeeded. He excelled. He disobeyed. In the Senate, Chancellor Palpatine rose, a soft voice, a gentle hand, a serpent in velvet. He praised the boy, invited him to chambers, called him friend. While the Jedi withheld trust, the politician offered flattery. It was a poison sweet as honey, and Anakin drank it, sip by sip. He began to see the council's hypocrisy, their fear disguised as wisdom, their dismissal of emotion not as virtue, but as weakness. He asked about his mother. They told him to let go. He spoke of dreams. They told him to ignore them. He asked for understanding. They gave him silence. But silence cannot bind prophecy. Not forever, far from Coruscant. Storms brewed, systems fractured, whispers of rebellion, whispers of war, whispers of Sith. Anakin's dreams deepened. Shmi cried out in sleep. He could feel her pain like fire through ice. He begged the council to let him go. They hesitated. They debated, too slow. By the time he reached her, she was dying. Tusken hands had broken her body, but it was time that killed her. Time and fear and distance enforced by Jedi doctrine. She died in his arms, and Anakin broke. He slaughtered them, not in battle, but in vengeance. Not warriors, not just men, women, children. He became what he would one day fear. And when the blood cooled, he wept, not because he regretted it, but because a part of him, a part he would never speak of, had enjoyed the power he returned. To the temple, told no one, buried the sin beneath duty. But the wound was there now, and the dark had tasted him. The Jedi did not know, but the Force did. And in the Chancellor's chambers, behind velvet curtains, Palpatine smiled. The boy was bending, not by force. By pain, he need only be given another reason to break. Chains, once shattered, do not mend. They twist, they reshape, they strangle. Anakin was no longer a child of Tatooine. He was no longer a student of peace. He was becoming something else, and the galaxy, blind in its ritual, blind in its war drums, blind in its politics, marched forward. The holocron whispers, the Force does not choose out of kindness. It selects the one most willing to burn. Chapter 3, The Veil of... The future is woven with blood. The future is not a road. It is not a light. It is not a promise. It is a veil, stitched in screams, soaked in crimson, hanging between now and never. And through this veil, Anakin Skywalker walked. Blind, furious, chosen. War had come. Not suddenly, not without warning, but orchestrated, composed like a symphony of death. The Clone Wars ignited not by fate, but by design. 1,000 systems rebelled. 1,000,000 troops were bred in secret. And the Jedi, keepers of peace, were turned into generals. They marched into fire without protest, into battlefields with no victory, into a war they were never meant to win. And Anakin, he thrived. The battlefield welcomed him. His instincts, once shamed, became praised. His anger, once silenced, became fuel. His victories piled high. Not clean, not righteous, but undeniable. To the galaxy, he was a hero. To the Jedi, a problem. To a prize. And yet, in every triumph, he felt the sickness dreams returned. Visions like broken mirrors. Padma screaming, reaching, dying. He saw it, night after night, her breath slipping, his hands grasping. The child she carried weeping without voice. He woke, soaked in fear. He sought Yoda, told him only fragments. The ancient master, blind in tradition, answered with riddles. Fear leads to the dark. Mourn them not, miss them not. Let go. But Anakin had never been taught to let go, only to obey. And obedience had brought him nothing but graves. He turned instead to Palpatine. The Chancellor did not speak in riddles. He did not scold. He spoke of ancient powers, of Sith Lords who had conquered death, of secrets the Jedi were too weak to embrace. Anakin listened, and the veil thinned. A child stirred within Padme's womb. A twin life, born in shadow. But Anakin could not celebrate. He saw the death before the birth. He saw the grave before the cradle. The Force offered no comfort, only echoes, only warnings. The Council began to suspect Palpatine, but not enough. Never enough. They sent Anakin to watch him. Not as a Jedi, as a spy. The betrayal burned. The Council still did not trust him. Not after all he had done. Not after all he had bled. He was a tool, a weapon. Never a brother. But Palpatine trusted him, or pretended to. He revealed himself, not as politician, as Sith, not as liar, as liberator. He offered Anakin a path, not to darkness, but to survival, to power enough to protect the ones he loved, to destroy death itself. The veil was no longer a mystery, it was an offer. The choice came in silence. Mace Windu moved to strike Palpatine down. Anakin watched, frozen, trembling, split between two faiths, between two lies, between what he had been taught and what he had been promised. Then he acted. The blade fell, the Jedi died, and the veil was torn. In that moment, Anakin Skywalker fell, but not into fire, into clarity, into the cold embrace of necessity, of power. He was given a new name, not by the Force, not by the stars, by his master, Darth Vader. He did not scream, he did not cry, he obeyed. He had made his choice, to save Podman, to save the child, to become something more, but the Force, ancient and cruel, demands payment. The holocron whispers, prophecy is not gift, it is hunger wearing the mask of fate. And Anakin, blinded by love, walked willingly into its mouth. Chapter 4. A bond that should not be there are bonds the Force permits, and there are bonds it punishes. The love between Jedi and galaxy is sacred, but the love between Jedi and one is seen as corruption, desire, attachment, chains. Yet chains are not always forged in malice. Sometimes they are forged in trembling hands, in whispered promises, in two hearts trying to be more than what the Order allows. Anakin and Padme had lived in shadows, their love hidden in folds of war and secrecy. A senator, a knight, a wife, a husband, forbidden yet real. Every battle fought was a prayer for her safety. Every stolen moment was a rebellion against a code that demanded emptiness. But the bond was not merely emotional, it was spiritual. The Force itself tangled around them, luminous and dark, whispering futures and warnings with every breath they shared. Anakin did not love Padme like a man. He loved her like a god, desperate to steal fire from the heavens to keep her warm. And she loved him back, but she feared what he was becoming. He woke now in cold sweats, visions of her death clawing at the back of his throat. Always the same blood on her lips, tears in her eyes, his hands too late. The Force would not silence them, it fed them. It showed him possibilities, but never the path to stop them. Pam begged him to rest. He could not. He studied Jedi archives in secret, sought wisdom in forbidden scripts, found nothing, and then, in the dark, came the serpent's tongue. Palpatine, his voice a balm and a blade, spoke of a Sith legend, Darth Plagueis, the wise. A being so powerful he could save the ones he loved from death. He could keep them from slipping into the void. But he was murdered, killed by his apprentice in sleep. Anakin asked, was it true? Palpatine only smiled. The Jedi would not teach him this power, the Sith would. He returned to Padme, cloaking his fear in half-lies. She touched his cheek, told him they would find another way, that love did not require control, that the future was not fixed. But to Anakin, the future was fixed, and it ended in her death. The Council summoned him again. The war had shifted. The Sith's hand was seen, but not yet seized. They promoted Anakin to the Council, but denied him the rank of Master, a gesture of honor twisted by insult. Anakin, seethed, his pride wounded, his loyalty tested. They ordered him to report on the Chancellor, to betray his only ally. He obeyed outwardly, but within, something cracked. The Jedi had never trusted him, never accepted him. Now they asked him to act as spy, as traitor, as weapon against the one man who listened. He returned to Palpatine, told him everything. and Palpatine laid bare the final truth. I am the Sith Lord you seek. Anakin drew his saber. Palpatine did not flinch. He spoke of the Jedi's hypocrisy, their blindness, their fear of his power, their fear of Anakin's destiny. He offered him a choice, not between light and dark, but between death and salvation, between helplessness and control. Anakin left, torn in two. He warned Mace Windu, but already doubted his path. Windu moved quickly, too quickly. He stormed the Chancellor's chambers, and there, the trap closed. Lightning danced. Sabers clashed. The sky screamed. Palpatine weakened. Windu raised his blade to end it. Anakin begged him to stop. To show mercy, Windu refused, and in that refusal, Anakin saw his last hope slipping. He struck, the Jedi fell. Palpatine, now scarred and triumphant, rose not as Chancellor, but as Emperor. Anakin knelt. You shall be known as Darth Vader. In that moment, the bond with Padme twisted. It had been forged in love. It was now tethered by fear, by lies, by blood. He had done it for her. He had damned himself for her. And the Force, ancient and unmoved, did not care. The holocron whispers, love is not weakness. It is the lie we tell ourselves before the fall. Anakin's bond was not a sin. It was the chain by which he pulled the galaxy into shadow. Chapter 5. The Master of Masks. He wore many faces, that won the Emperor. Once a man, now a mask, and behind each mask, another. Smile. Father, friend, savior, Lord. Palpatine was never his name. It was his costume. His true name had no breath, no mercy, no age. Darth Sidious, the master of puppets, the architect of extinction. He had watched Anakin since boyhood, watched the fire behind his eyes, the fracture in his faith, the rage too deep for Jedi chains to hold. He did not rush, he did not push, he fed, gently, slowly, patient as rot, offered what the Jedi denied, praise, understanding, purpose. And when the boy fell, Sidious caught him in velvet hands. Darth Vader was not made in a single breath. He was sculpted, stroke by stroke, cut by cut. Palpatine knew. To break a man, one must first isolate the soul, so the First Order was slaughter. Vader marched on the Jedi Temple, not to fight, to cleanse. He led clone troopers through the gates. Once sacred, he passed the statues of ancient masters, now silent. He strode into halls of memory, and made them graves. The younglings were the first to die. They begged. He did not hear. The Force wept, but did not intervene. Elsewhere, Order 66 echoed across the stars. Clone troopers turned on their Jedi commanders, loyal not to bonds or friendship, but to programming buried deep. One by one, the guardians of peace fell, not in war, but in betrayal. Ahsoka fled. Obi-Wan hid. Yoda vanished into exile, and the temple burned. Palpatine declared victory. The Jedi were traitors. He, their righteous executioner. The Republic, a lie. The Empire, the truth, the people. Cheered, Vader was sent to Mustafar. The Separatists, once useful pawns, were discarded like tools. Their leaders died without question, their plans crumbling in Vader's shadow. He did not argue, he obeyed. But Padme, sensing something broken, followed him. She found him changed, not in form, not yet, but in presence, cold, distant, eyes empty of all but purpose. She begged him to return, told him there was still hope, still light. He spoke of peace through control, of safety through power, of saving her from death by making the galaxy kneel. And then she wept. Obi-1 stepped from her ship. Eyes ignited. Betrayal, that was the word he heard. Not truth, not love, only betrayal. He choked Padmam. Not as punishment, as prevention. She must be taken from Obi-Wan, must be brought back, must be saved. Obi-1 attacked. The duel was not of blades, it was of heartbreak. Master and apprentice, brother and brother, fire roared beneath them. The planet screamed, metal broke, and in the end, so did Anakin. He was left limbless, burning, screaming, eyes wide with hatred and disbelief. You were the chosen one, Obi-Wan cried. You were meant to destroy the Sith, not join them, but destiny had no ears. Anakin howled until his voice became flame, until his breath became smoke, until only hate remained. Pad, far away, gave birth to twins, Luke, Leia, and then she died, not by wound, by sorrow. Palpatine retrieved what was left. He did not grieve, he did not flinch. He brought the broken body to his fortress, rid it with metal, with pain, with command. N. When Anakin Skywalker awoke, he was no longer. The machine stood. Vader breathed. The Emperor told him, "She is dead. You killed her." The scream shattered the Force, but it did not change the truth. The holocron whispers, "He who wears the mask forgets his face, and in forgetting becomes the mask." Anakin died not once, but thrice, in the temple, on Mustafar, in the lie he chose to believe. Chapter 6. The Temple and the Pyre. The Jedi Temple stood once as a symbol of wisdom, of balance, of light untouched by time. But now its halls were blackened, its archives scorched, its echoes filled with the silence of children who would never speak again. It had become a pyre, a sacred tomb built not to honor the fallen, but to erase them. And in its ashes, the Empire was born. From the Senate's high columns, the Emperor declared a new order. His voice, crackling and deliberate, rang through every system. He spoke of treachery, of Jedi betrayal, of war's necessity. The people, wearied by chaos, clung to his words. They did not see the shadows stretching behind them. They saw peace, and bowed to tyranny. And Darth Vader stood beside him, not as man, not as myth, but as monument. His armor was new, still stinking of forge and flesh. His breath, a mechanical wound, echoed like a curse. His face was gone. Only the mask remained, cold, watching. Eternal, in truth, he was hollow. The pain of Poms's death lived behind every hiss of his respirator. Not grief, not sorrow, something older, emptier. A void wrapped in rage. He had become what he feared, a prisoner again. This time, not of sand, but steel. Palpatine wasted no time. He set the machine in motion. The Inquisitorius was born, twisted remnants of fallen Jedi, corrupted and reshaped, now sent to finish the slaughter. Their prey, survivors of Order 66. Those who ran, those who hid, those who dared to remember the Force. Vader led them, without mercy. Without question, Jedi fell, not with dignity, but with horror. They died on distant moons, in alleyways, in whispers. Their lightsabers snapped, their names erased. But the Force does not forget. It shimmered still, faint and flickering, in hidden corners, in lone refugees, in scattered texts, and in two children, whose names, the Sith did not yet know. Luke, Leia. They grew apart, hidden by fire and fate. The boy raised by moisture farmers under Tatooine's harsh suns, the girl shaped by royalty. On Alderaan's serene plains, each unknowingly carried the storm in their blood. And Vader walked among ruins. He hunted rebels, he crushed dissent, he slaughtered without joy, for joy had died with her, in the temple now abandoned. He sometimes returned, not to mourn, not to reflect, but to listen. The stones still whispered. His footsteps echoed where he once knelt as a boy, afraid and eager. Now he ruled this hollow place, but the ghosts remained. He stood before the wall of fallen Padawans, saw their empty names, saw what he had done, and the Force twisted around. Him, not in anger, but in sorrow. He remembered Obi-Wan, his voice, his eyes. "You were my brother." That sentence lived inside him, festering, and Palpatine watched. He knew Vader's pain. He had designed it. Pain was the chain. Pain was the leash. The more Vader remembered, the tighter it pulled. But even the Emperor could not touch the memory buried deepest. A moment, a face, not Padme, a child, unseen, unheld. Anakin had dreamt of his son, and the dream, like all things left unfinished, waited. The holocron whispers, "The pyre is not the end." Fire consumes, yes, but it also leaves something behind, blackened, twisted, and alive. The temple was ash, but the will that lit its torches still moved in secret. Chapter 7. He who falls with stars in his eyes. He was born of fire and fear, a weapon without a pulse, a mask without a face, a scream preserved in armor. Yet beneath the breath that rasped like death itself, Anakin Skywalker still lived, blind, buried, dreaming in chains, and in those dreams stars still shone. But dreams are treacherous things. The galaxy now belonged to the Empire. Its banners stretched across worlds like bloodstains that would never wash. Entire systems bowed not out of loyalty, but of exhaustion. The war was over, they were told. The Jedi were dead, and yet unrest remained. Quiet, scattered, but alive. And Vader, the Emperor's fist, was sent to crush it. He did not question, he obeyed. But obedience is not peace. Every mission blurred into another. Every rebel a shadow. Every victory a hollow drumbeat. There were no more jewels of purpose. No more faces worth remembering. Only orders. Only silence. Except one, the boy, a rebel pilot. A name heard in fragments. Luke Skywalker. The name struck him like a blade dulled by time. Skywalker. Impossible. A coincidence. A trap. But the Force had no patience for lies. It whispered the truth. Cold, certain, Anakin's son lived, and the galaxy tilted. Vader did not speak of it. Not to the Emperor. Not to the Inquisitors. Not even to himself. He only searched where once. He hunted Jedi. He now hunted whispers. Traces of the boy who carried his name, his blood, his hope, his undoing. And then he saw him. Aboard the Death Star, the boy stood before him, young, afraid, but bold. His saber green, his eyes too bright, too familiar. He called Vader father, not in love, in defiance. Vader's breath faltered, not audibly, but within. This boy had been raised in light, taught mercy, taught compassion, taught everything. Anakin had long since burned away, yet he did not hate. Not truly, and that terrified him more than any blade. Their duel was not elegant. It was raw, desperate. The Emperor watched from his throne, silent as fate. Lightning coiled in his hands, but he did not yet strike. He wanted to see. He wanted to test. Vader pressed harder, pushed the boy, spoke of darkness, of power, of destiny. Luke resisted, but anger swelled within him. Fear, fury, the same emotions that once claimed his father. And in that crucible, Vader saw his reflection, not in armor, in failure. Luke struck, cut off his hand, watched the wires spark, and then stopped. He threw down his weapon. I am a Jedi, like my father before me. Vader froze. He who had fallen, he who had killed, he who had burned temples and choked dreams. He now called father by the one soul still unbroken. The Emperor snarled, raised his hands. Lightning tore through the air. Luke screamed. Vader stood between them. For a moment, the Force itself held its breath. The pain returned, not from the lightning, from memory. Padma, Obi-Wan, Shmi, a child that never saw his face. All of them dead, not by fate, but by his hand. He had become the storm, and in that moment, he chose to end it. He lifted the Emperor. The lightning scorched his armor, fried his lungs. His vision blurred. He did not care. He threw Palpatine into the abyss, and with that scream, the darkness fractured. The Sith were broken, and Anakin Skywalker breathed, truly. For the first time in decades, not through a machine, through choice, through sacrifice. The holocron whispers, he who falls may yet rise. But only through fire, only through the pain of knowing. Anakin died in rage. He was reborn in mercy. The prophecy, misunderstood by all, had been fulfilled, not by power, but by surrender. Chapter 8. The machine that weeps in silence when the lightning faded, the throne was empty. The Emperor, once the shadow behind all things, was gone, swallowed by the abyss he had ruled from. The Death Star trembled, its core unraveling like a dying star. And Vader, Anakin, fell to his knees, not in defeat, but in release. He could no longer stand. Luke held him, trembling, calling him father again and again, as if the word alone could hold back death. And for the first time since fire devoured Mustafar, Anakin looked through the mask with his own eyes, and he saw his son, not as a Jedi, not as a weapon, not as a means, but as the hope he had once abandoned. Let me see you with my own eyes. The mask was removed, and what remained was not monstrous. It was human, burned, broken, but human. There was no hatred in his gaze, no anger, only quiet, the kind that comes at the edge of death when all illusions have burned away. He smiled. You were right. You were right about me. Then the machine failed, but the soul within it. Did not Luke escape the crumbling Death Star, carrying his father's body, not the shell, not the armor, the man, the fallen Jedi, the chosen one? He built a pyre, not out of duty, out of mourning, and there, beneath Ender's trees, the fire consumed the suit. The breath, the name, Darth Vader, scourge of stars, turned to smoke, carried into the sky like a whisper of sorrow, finally let go. But the Force does not end in flame. It folds, it ripples, it remembers. And on that night, beside celebration, and Song Luke turned to see three figures, shimmering, cloaked in light. Obi-Wan, Yoda, and beside them, Anakin, whole, young, at peace. The man the galaxy had forgotten, the man the darkness could not destroy. But there is no ending, only echoes. Even in death, Vader's legacy endured. His choices scarred galaxies. His hands shaped destinies. He was the blade, the wound, the salve, and the scream. The Jedi remembered him as a warning. The Sith whispered of him as a myth. And the Force, vast and unknowable, pulsed with the paradox he had become. The holocron whispers, he wept not for the sins he committed, but for the time he lost. The machine was never his prison, only his excuse. And in the silence of fire, he was heard, finally, by the Force he once defied. Chapter 9. The child who carries Ashi's the war had ended, but peace had not begun. Empires do not die quietly. They leave echoes, embers, ruins that still burn. And among those ruins walked a child, not by age, but by blood. Luke Skywalker, son of the fallen, heir to a myth the galaxy barely understood. He carried no crown, only ashes, ashes of Jedi robes, ashes of Sith masks, ashes of truths spoken too late. He did not yet grasp what he carried. The galaxy celebrated. The Emperor was dead. The Death Star destroyed. The rebels victorious. But Luke stood apart, alone, not because he was proud, but because he had seen what they had not. He had seen power twisted into fear. He had seen love become death. He had seen his father, the monster, the man, and chosen to save him. And now he bore that decision like a scar. The Force stirred around him, not in harmony, in dissonance. It sang of change, of danger, of balance not yet achieved. The dark side was wounded, not gone. The light flared, but flickered. A wound this deep does not heal in a single act of mercy. Luke returned to the worlds that once echoed with Jedi voices. He found only bones. Temples shattered by war, archives reduced to dust, names lost to time. But among the ruins, fragments remained, scrolls, holocrons, whispers caught in crystalline silence. The Force was not dead. It was sleeping, watching, waiting for the next to rise or fall. Luke read them. He listened to voices long past. He saw how the Jedi had faltered, not through weakness, but rigidity, through their fear of change, through their denial of love, of emotion, of truth. And he saw his father's fall, not as a solitary tragedy, but as the consequence of a broken order. He began to wonder, what if the Jedi could return, not as they were, but as they were meant to be, not distant, not blind, not cold, but awake, alive. He wandered, searched, studied, not as a master, but as a student of sorrow. Every step forward felt like walking through ash, through memory, through questions the Force refused to answer outright. And always, the shadow of Vader loomed. The galaxy did not forgive easily. To some, Luke was a hero, to others the son of a monster. He bore both roles in silence. Leia, his sister by blood, remained a beacon, but she walked a path of politics, not prophecy. Her power flickered, felt but hidden, a light she chose not to wield. Luke was alone in his calling. He sought students. He found few. He built a temple, not of stone, but of hope. But hope, like fire, can consume as quickly as it warms. For in the far corners of space, the dark stirred again, not as empire, as legacy. The seed of the Sith, thought scorched, still smoldered, and one day it would rise. But that is not yet this chapter. Now, the child of Vader stands among ruins, head bowed, hand resting on a saber once wielded by both Jedi and Sith. He does not speak, he listens, and the Force listens back. The holocron whispers, ashes are not the end. They are the soil from which futures grow. But even soil remembers fire, and the child who walks through ash must choose to rebuild or to burn again. Chapter 10. The voice that lingers after death. There are voices that end in silence, and there are voices that echo, not through sound, but through consequence. The voice of Anakin Skywalker was one such echo. It did not die with his breath. It lingered in his son's mind, in the Force's current, in the hearts of those who could not forget. The galaxy called him a tyrant, a shadow, a Sith, but the Force remembered all things. It remembered the boy on Tatooine who built machines to feel less alone, the Padawan who stared too long at the stars, searching for answers the Jedi never gave, the man who reached for power to protect what he loved, and lost himself in the process, and it remembered that he had turned back. Luke felt that voice, not in words, but in weight. He returned to the pyre in dreams, always the fire, always the breath. He stood there, again and again, hearing his father call out, not in pain, but in longing, not, "Help me, forgive me." The Force had no doctrine for forgiveness, only memory, only reflection. Luke began to understand that redemption is not a reversal, it is a reckoning, and the galaxy still trembled from Vader's shadow. He kept the saber, the one his father lost on Bespin, the one he himself had thrown away before the Emperor. He rebuilt it, not to wield, to honor, not as a weapon, as a reminder. But others did not see it. That way, some sought him out. Believers, pilgrims, warriors, they called him master. They wanted training, power, destiny. They asked for secrets he did not possess. He gave them honesty instead. Few stayed, even fewer listened. The Jedi were gone, he told them, but the Force was not. And that difference meant everything in solitude. He felt his father most clearly on Octu, in the stillness of forgotten waters, in ruined libraries, where ancient scrolls whispered not dogma but doubt. Sometimes, in meditation, he felt a presence, soft, familiar. Anakin never spoke as a ghost. He did not appear in robes or light. He existed in moments, in a hesitation before Luke struck two, hard in a question whispered before drawing the saber, in a sorrow that returned whenever. The wind reminded him of a scream that once echoed in a throne room. Luke asked once, aloud, "Are you there?" Pressed beneath skin, the Jedi had created Vader, not by evil, but by error. And so Luke would not rebuild the past. He would not raise a temple of rules and silence. He would raise one of truth, painful, imperfect, human, but in the dark corners of the galaxy. Others still remembered Vader, not as tragedy, as idol. They built shrines, not to Anakin, but to the mask. They worshipped power, not sacrifice. And in that worship, the Sith stirred again, not in title, but in spirit. For darkness never truly dies. It sleeps, it learns, and it waits for another voice. The holocron whispers, the dead do not guide, they haunt, and the voice that lingers after death may heal, or call forth ruin. Luke Skywalker listens, but the galaxy speaks in many tongues. Chapter 11. Of shadows and children are not born into light. They are born into echoes, into wars they did not start, into legacies they did not choose. And when the shadow of a fallen father stretches across the galaxy, it does not pass quietly. It darkens the soil where new seeds are sown. Luke Skywalker, son of the Chosen One, sought to break the cycle, to raise a new generation, not of warriors, but of balance, not chained to Jedi rigidity, nor seduced by Sith certainty. Something else, something truer. He gathered them, not many, a few, children, survivors of broken worlds. Not suppression, he taught them awareness, not control. He told them of fear, of love, of choice, and he told them of his father, not as Darth Vader, the destroyer of worlds, but as Anakin, the boy who burned and the man who returned. Some listened, one did not. Ben Solo, a child born of legend, nephew to a myth, grandson of both royalty and ruin, he was gifted, frighteningly so. And from the beginning, the Force pulled around him unnaturally deep. Luke loved him, but he also feared him, not for what he was, for what he might become. Ben was curious, intelligent, but beneath the surface there was hunger, not for destruction, for belonging, for purpose. He asked too many questions, he read too many histories, he felt too much, and somewhere beyond, the dark listened. It had no name anymore, no body, but it lingered. Remnants of the Sith, embers of Sidious, whispers older than the Jedi themselves. They reached for Ben like cold hands beneath still water. Luke sensed it. He watched the boy's dreams darken. He watched him draw away. He told himself it was temporary, that love and patience would be enough. But shadows do not wait. One night, in a vision, Luke saw it. Not metaphor, not fear, reality, his temple in flames, his students dead, Ben cloaked in shadow, a saber ignited in crimson, and standing behind him something else, something old. When he awoke, Luke did not think. He went to Ben's quarters. He stood above the sleeping boy, and the saber was in his hand. Only for a moment. A moment was enough. Ben woke, saw the blade, saw his uncle's eyes, and in that moment the choice was made, not by Luke, by the wound. Ben fled, but not before fire, not before death, not before betrayal. The temple fell again, not to clones, to a child, to a child, to a legacy, to the same story. Repeating Luke vanished, not in cowardice, in shame. The Jedi had failed again, and this time, through him, the holocron whispers. Children do not escape the past, they carry it. And if the burden is too heavy, they bury it beneath fury. The shadow has returned, not as empire, but as heir, and the fire begins anew. Chapter 12. The wound that divides the stars the galaxy fractures, not with the roar of weapons, but with the silence of broken trust. The wound left by betrayal is deeper than any scar, invisible yet bleeding, dividing star systems, families, and destinies alike. Luke Skywalker, once the beacon of hope, had become a ghost. His disappearance cast ripples through the fragile peace the rebellion had fought to win. The new republic was born, but its foundation trembled, unsteady as a newborn's breath. Meanwhile, Ben Solo, now cloaked in darkness, walked a path both familiar and unknown. The weight of his lineage crushed him even as it empowered him. He was no longer a boy, not yet a Sith, but no longer a Jedi. A fracture in the Force itself. He sought answers in forbidden places, in the lost temples of old Sith lords, in ancient texts drenched with malice and power. He learned of manipulation, of destiny twisted by lies, of a galaxy shaped by unseen hands, and the voice of the dark side. whispered louder, not a master, not a teacher, a shadow, vast, formless. Hungry, it offered clarity, it offered strength, it offered release. But the price was always the same. Ben embraced it. He took a new name, Kylo Ren, and with it came new horrors. The First Order rose from the ashes of the Empire, its black fleets, blotting out stars. Its legions marched with discipline born of fear and fanaticism. Kylo Ren was its weapon, its enforcer, its terrifying heart. He hunted the last Jedi, he hunted hope, and the galaxy trembled once more. Yet even in darkness, light flickers, a spark hidden in a scavenger's heart on a desert world named Jakku. Girl named Rey, untouched by lineage, yet bound by destiny. The Force called her. The holocron whispers, wounds do not heal on their own. They fester, they divide. Yet from division a choice arises, to sever the scar, or to let it bleed forever. The stars watch, and the Force waits. Chapter 13. The last light of a fading. Order, the Jedi Order, had become a memory, fragile, fading, scattered like the last embers of a dying fire. Their temples, once towering beacons of wisdom and balance, lay in ruin or silence, their teachings reduced to whispers and relics. But even as shadows lengthened, a fragile light endured. Rey was that light, not born of prophecy nor noble blood, but of the Force itself, raw, untamed, and ancient. She carried no legacy, only the weight of potential. The galaxy did not know what to make of her, but the Force recognized her as a beacon in darkness. She wandered the ruins of the old world, drawn by echoes, forgotten holocrons, lost scrolls, and faded memories. She sought answers, but found questions of who she was, of where she belonged, of what balance truly meant. Her training was harsh, incomplete, and filled with doubt. Luke Skywalker, the last true Jedi Master, had withdrawn from the galaxy, burdened by failure and regret. His teachings were warnings as much as lessons, heavy with the scars of the past. Yet Rey persisted. She reached out through the Force, seeking connection, seeking guidance, seeking the truth that the Jedi had lost. Kylo Ren, once Ben Solo, haunted her path. Torn by darkness and light, his rage was both weapon and prison. Their encounters crackled with fury and unspoken sorrow, each a mirror to the other's fears and hopes. The galaxy held its breath. Would the last light falter, or would it blaze anew? The holocron whispers, the Order may fade, but the Force endures. It is neither light nor dark, but a balance waiting to be found. The last light burns, not to blind, but to guide through shadows, through pain, through history's weight. Chapter 14. The Dance of Shadows and Light. The galaxy is a stage of eternal dancing, endless weaving of shadow and light. Neither dominates, neither yields completely. The Force moves in rhythms older than stars, in cycles of birth, death, and rebirth. Rey and Kylo Ren, children of broken legacies, became the axis upon which this dance turned. They were drawn together by fate and fury, bound by conflict and kinship. Each step forward was matched by another in retreat, each strike mirrored by a counter. Their encounters were less battle and more ritual. Blades ignited with flames of emotion, rage, hope, fear, and love intertwined. The Force sang through them sometimes as a lullaby, sometimes as a scream, in moments between combat. Rey glimpsed the man beneath the mask's Ben Solo, torn and searching. Kylo saw in her a chance for redemption, a light he believed lost forever. But the darkness is patient. It whispered lies. It fanned flames of doubt and pride. It beckoned Kylo to seize power, to embrace his pain as strength, and it tempted Rey to reject the past, to rise alone. They both wavered, caught between what was and what could be. The galaxy watched, caught in their struggle. Systems trembled, alliances shifted. The fate of billions balanced on choices neither fully understood. In the final moments of their dance, they faced a decision older than time itself, to become destroyers or saviors. The holocron whispers, the dance is endless. Light and shadow are not foes but partners. To deny one is to betray the other. Only when balance is embraced can the song of the Force be whole again. Chapter 15. The Silence. Before the storm. Before the storm, before the storm, there is a silence thick and suffocating, heavy with the weight of inevitability. The galaxy held its breath, the stars themselves seeming to dim in anticipation. The fragile peace shattered into shards, and even the Force recoiled in quiet dread. Rey retreated to the hidden sanctuary, a place where the ancient teachings whispered in the wind and shadows. Danced with light, she sought clarity, seeking the truth beyond the legends and the pain. But clarity is often a double-edged saber, revealing as much fear as hope. Kylo Ren, torn by the fractured echoes of his soul, stood at the precipice between the darkness he had embraced and the light he had not yet forsaken. His mask, once a symbol of unyielding power, now felt like a prison forged by his own hand. The galaxy's fate hinged on moments unseen, whispered prayers, flickers of doubt, glimmers of resolve. Alliances formed and shattered like brittle crystal, and every step forward risked plunging all into chaos. The Emperor's shadow lingered still, not in flesh, but in legacy, his machinations etched into the very fabric of the Force. The Sith's hunger had not ended. It merely bided its time. Amidst this fragile quiet, the Force whispered warnings and promises. Echoes of past tragedies and future hope intertwined. The holocron whispers, in silence lies power and peril. The calm before the storm is the crucible, where destiny is forged. What comes next will shape the galaxy for generations, the dawn or endless night. Chapter 16. The Gathering Tempest. The tempest gathers beyond sight, unseen yet inevitable. Like a dark cloud swallowing the horizon, it loomed a maelstrom of fury, fear, and forgotten promises. The galaxy, fragile and fractured, trembled under its weight. Rey stepped forward, no longer a seeker, but a beacon. Her resolve hardened. By trials, her heart heavy with the burdens of those who came before. She sought to unite the scattered remnants, Jedi rebels, and those who still dreamed of peace under a single purpose. Balance. Kylo Ren, scarred and conflicted, embraced the storm within, no longer simply a harbinger of destruction, but a force of chaos and renewal. His hands, once trembling with doubt, now clenched with fierce determination to reshape the galaxy in his vision. To end the cycles of pain, the First Order rallied. Its fleets darkened the skies. The last vestiges of empire stirred from shadowed corners, eager to reclaim dominion. And beneath the storm's roar, ancient Sith secrets awoke, relics buried in darkness, waiting for the moment to rise again. Allies. An enemy shifted like sand beneath winds. Trust was scarce, betrayal common. The lines between friend and foe blurred, as desperation sharpened every blade and every word. The Force itself pulsed with anticipation, restless, trembling. As the old war prepared to ignite anew, the holocron whispers. The tempest does not choose sides. It tears all asunder before rebirth. In its fury lies both destruction and salvation. Those who stand amid its winds must decide to be shattered, or to become the storm. Chapter 17. The last stand of the chosen. The time had come when destinies collided, when the threads of fate wove tightly into a final tapestry of light and shadow. The galaxy held its breath, and the Force trembled as ancient powers stirred to their climax. Rey stood resolute, the weight of generations upon her shoulders. She was not merely a survivor, she was the embodiment of hope, fragile yet unyielding. Her lightsaber ignited, casting a pale glow upon the shattered battleground where the future would be decided. Opposite her, Kylo Ren, once Ben Solo, now the dark storm incarnate, embraced the chaos within. His every step echoed with the legacy of fallen empires and broken promises. His crimson blade burned like a dying star, fierce and relentless. The clash was inevitable, not just of sabers, but of ideals, of legacies, of the very soul of the Force. Each strike carried the weight of Anakin's past, the echoes of Vader's fall, and the hopes of a galaxy yearning for balance. Around them, the final battle raged. Fleets collided in the void. Worlds trembled beneath the fury of war. The First Order sought dominion. The Resistance fought for survival. Yet all eyes turned to the duel that would shape the fate of all. In the crucible of conflict, light and darkness intertwined. Pain, forgiveness, hatred, and love surged in waves, a tempest of emotion as old as the Force itself. And in a moment, suspended beyond time, the choice was made. The holocron whispers, the chosen do not always save the day. Sometimes they save themselves. Sometimes they save the ones they love. And sometimes they save a future yet unwritten. Chapter 18. The dawn beyond darkness. The war's end did not come with fanfare. No triumphant cries or heralded victories. Instead, it arrived as a whisper, a fragile breath after a long, suffocating storm. The galaxy lay scarred, its wounds raw and bleeding, but the dawn had come. Rey stood amid the ruins of battle, the weight of loss and hope balanced upon her shoulders. The mask of Kylo Ren lay shattered, and Ben Solo emerged from the ashes, broken, repentant yet free. The Force, vast and unknowable, pulsed in quiet rhythm, no longer fractured but seeking harmony. The scars of the past remained reminders of pain and folly, but also of sacrifice and redemption. The Jedi Order, once rigid and unyielding, would be reborn anew, not as a monument to the past, but as a living testament to balance, embracing light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, hope and fear. The holocrons whispered one final truth. Destiny is not written in stone or starfire. It is forged in choice, in love, in the courage to change. And so, from the ashes of the Sith and the Jedi, a new chapter began, fragile, uncertain, but alive. The holocron whispers, darkness is never final. Light is never absolute. Between them lies the path, the endless dawn beyond darkness. Walk it with open eyes, for the Force is always watching, always waiting. The prophecy is not the end, it is the beginning, end of the Sith holocron's recounting.